Guys, Bullhorn Betty here. I've been covering the case of Lynette Hooker since almost the onset of this case, within a few days of her disappearing. And we just had the Coast Guard leave the Bahamas for the second time without Lynette Hooker. So this is kind of just the discussion over on TikTok about Lynette Hooker and the details of the case. What are your thoughts? What are truly your thoughts? Write them in the comments section down below. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. And if you still have some hypes left over from the week, hit this girl up with some hypes. I appreciate all your viewership and I appreciate you. Please pass this information around to keep this case alive and well. Guys, we have breaking news on this case. And guess what? The Coast Guard has already come to this area and left. What have we learned? Hey guys, I've been covering the case of Lynette Hooker, 55-year-old mom, disappeared from the Bahamas with her husband of 25 years. He said she fell off the dinghy in the Sea of Abaco, and we call bullshit. We're hearing the husband's story, Bryan Hooker, is not adding up with what the data on his phone and his watch are saying. As facts exist from early on, we learned that the Apple Watch that she was observed wearing that day was on the Soulmate. We also learned that the weather conditions had changed around 9:30 that evening. And what that coincides with is the satellite system went down at around 9:30 and there was a splash heard around the same time. A lot of stuff happened in this 9:30 time slot, and we're going to break that down in just a few minutes. And then lastly, there were flashlights observed on the top of the Soulmate, and they were captured by video. This is Bryan Hooker, and this is her husband of 25 years, and she was with him when she fell off the dinghy. His story is they were coming back after drinking all day long, and she was driving the boat and had the key in her hand. And when she went overboard, she took the key with her and she was swept out to sea. Now, he says on one hand, he saw her swimming toward the land. And when he spoke to another person, he said he saw her swimming toward the boat. However, he drifted for help almost 9 hours away on the other side of the Sea of Abaco, which was about 4 miles away. The kicker is, in many of the places he crossed, he could have gotten up and walked, which was strange. But I digress. Bryan was arrested on April 8th under suspicion of homicide and was released on April 13th with no charges. After speaking to the media and saying he's not leaving the Bahamas and nothing is going to stop him from searching for his wife, the very next day, he boarded a plane and left the Bahamas and never returned again. He ended up paying a boat captain and a mate to bring his yacht back to the United States of America. However, the Coast Guard intercepted this vessel and seized it. And of course, when the data came back, Bryan was not in the places he said he was. The U.S. Coast Guard asked the Bahamians if they could search areas that had not yet been searched, and they brought their dog Maggie, which was observed during the first round of the U.S. Coast Guard being in the area back when Lynette had disappeared. Well, they were there for a few days with a 124-foot cutter, which acted as their command center. And of course, they did not find Lynette Hooker, but they did take possession of the dinghy from the Bahamian police. And it is believed that they did get some other evidence that could be useful in their case. I learned when they were out there, they weren't just retracing that day's steps. They actually went back a few days. Now, I'm uncertain if that had anything to do with the air tanks previously filled up days before Lynette disappeared or not, or if they were just looking at their entire week. I'm unsure, but we are getting reports they were not just specific about that day. So where is Lynette Hooker, and will we learn any more? Will she be found? Right now, I wouldn't say that the Coast Guard is going back empty-handed, but they didn't find her. and her family wants to bring her home. It is my understanding that the family knows she is deceased and believes that Bryan murdered her. From the East Coast to the West Coast, we are everywhere true crime is. We are asking for the public's help. We are searching in the woods. We are doing what it takes here on the Bullhorn Betty channels to find answers to the most alarming cases we have been watching on the news. I can tell you personally that I have traveled this entire country seeking these answers and bringing that content right here to you here on the Bullhorn Betty channels and Bullhorn Betty Crime Stories. We are happy with the work that we've done. We brought many answers to the public, and we have defied mainstream media in our pursuit of the truth in these cases. We will continue to work, we will continue to fight for these victims, and we will continue to tell their stories here on my channels. Welcome to the Bullhorn Betty brand of channels and the Coffee Club. Thank you for your love, thank you for your support, and more importantly, thank you for allowing me to bring these victims' stories to each and every one of you, advocating for each of these victims. God bless you. God bless America, and more importantly, God bless our victims. Well, hello, my beauties. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm Bullhorn Betty. We've been covering the case of Lynette Hooker. I hope you guys are doing well this Sunday. We were hoping to have better news. We were hoping that we could say that she has been found. Unfortunately, the U.S. Coast Guard went out there to do an additional search, and she has not been found. If you guys have never heard of her before, this is Lynette Hooker, 55-year-old mom. She sold everything in 2023 and embarked on a retirement journey with her husband out in the open seas aboard a yacht. And according to the husband, they were drinking all day on the islands, and they were heading back on a dinghy to their soulmate, which is their yacht. And a wave came, knocked her off the boat, and the conditions just swept her out to sea, and he couldn't stop it. In one statement, she was swimming toward the land. In another statement to another person, she was swimming toward the yacht. And he couldn't get to her, and she had the key, and yada, yada, yada. And he drifted 9 hours to the other side of the Sea of Abaco. And, you know, the story just didn't make sense. This is Bryan, her husband of 25 years. And right now we believe he is going to be arrested at any moment. We don't know how much longer it's going to be. We feel like they've got enough evidence for a no-body homicide, arrest and trial, or at least building in that direction. But they did bring out 142 foot or 24 feet or whatever, something very huge. This is the cutter. This is the U.S. Coast Guard cutter, and it is quite a massive ship that they, I believe, turned into basically a command center when they just recently went out to the Bahamas to search an area that was not disclosed to them by Bryan earlier in the investigation. So we're learning that Bryan washed up, or alleged, let me turn this just a little bit, allegedly washed up way up here. However, the Coast Guard was searching down here because they believe, right there, because they believe he was there. They've got his phone and his watch that pings him in this location. So where is Lynette? You see all these dark areas in the water? Those dark areas imply depth. And there are little pockets of these deep, dark voids in the ground, the sea floor, right? And so I've always thought if there's seagrass or something obscuring, because when we heard of the initial investigation, we heard of drones and fixed wing planes. We didn't hear of scuba divers. We didn't hear of anybody going in and checking around the docks to see, because when we watched the video on Ashley Banfield of Carly on the boat, there was a very disturbing image that happened. It was this bag of ropes, and it looked like it had been frantically gone through. It was just laying there, and there was some ropes just hanging out. And then when she turned the camera, on the other side were two 10-pound weights. And it just gave me this spooky, hey Danielle, thank you. Mwah. It just gave me this spooky, creepy vibe. Like weighted down, rope weighted down, and you're looking out there and you're like, okay, where could he weight her down if he, ropes and weight? And of course, naturally, that's where your brain is kind of going when you hear those things in combination or in conjunction with one another. And so I originally thought she was on land, and I still believe there is a possibility of being on land, but it's the splash in the water at 9:30. It's the lights and the flashlight on top of his boat at 12 that I think she's a little closer. I feel like there was docks around there in Aunt Pat's Bay, and I feel like those docks would have obscured like a drone or a fixed wing helicopter, and those docks are you have poles and posts, and he's a scuba diver. Could he have went down there and kind of just wrapped her all up and held her? You know what I'm like? I don't know. I'm not saying he did anything to her. We know his story is horse crap, but it just makes you wonder where she could be. Did he find like a little bed of seagrass, and drop her kind of in the seagrass where she could be obscured? I don't know. I really don't know. One thing we've learned about Brian, though, is that he was offered to resign or be fired because he was tampering with the GPS on his work truck to obscure his location on his work truck, which is really insanity to me. The U.S. Coast Guard, in conjunction with the Bahamian police, Royal Police, they were working to clear these other areas that Brian never disclosed initially as being at. I was hoping they were going to be here for a couple weeks, and it was sad news that they're already back to Florida. The Coast Guard's already gone back, so they were only out here for a few days, and I was kind of, I won't be honest, I'm thankful. I don't misunderstand. I'm very gracious that they came out here. I'm very gracious that they kept this story alive and all the work that they're doing. I don't want to sound, and I say that on my show, I don't want to sound, ungrateful. We're very thankful for everything they're doing. They're working their butt off. They didn't cause this. They didn't do this, right? Law enforcement didn't do this. Brian did this, potentially. So it's not their fault. I guess I had hoped that they would be out there for at least a few weeks, not just days. And I think I was just disappointed because of my misconception of what this was, about. But I really don't believe they're going to need Lynette's body to bring charges against Brian, because Brian was his worst enemy and made all of these statements that he uttered himself, that he chose to utter, and it was about her being on the dinghy and never being back to the yacht and stuff like that. And I truly believe they're going to be able to prove that his entire statement was false. And if he's lying literally about everything, and she's missing, well, there's you in a circumstantial case of this kind, it's not about proving he was the only person that did it. It's proving nobody else could. In a circumstantial case, you're basically have the hard job of eliminating the rest of the world. And that's why circumstantial cases are so difficult to bring on, because you're not really saying that this person had, you have to, because you don't have the body, you have to prove that nobody else could have done anything with it. You've got to basically clear the entire world in order to prove your case beyond a reasonable doubt. And sometimes that's very difficult, but there's a lot of successes in it. And the feds are very successful in no body homicide cases, criminal cases. So I think they're really building this for a nobody case, a circumstantial case. And some of the things I'm hearing that they were doing, because they went back I think related to days, and I believe it had something to do with the air tanks. I'm not sure, but I believe it had something to do with them recently filling up the air tanks, but they were backtracking their movements days. That's what I heard, days. But the Coast Guard was there. They did searches. They did major searches with roves and all types of stuff to try to locate Lynette. I found it awfully suspect that they went to an abandoned harbor that was on the other side of Marsh Harbor, where he ultimately washed up to. I hope they found the keys. Like, I feel like there's keys or something, or because I don't believe she had the keys. Everybody said he's the one that always drove the dinghy, yet he says that she had the keys, and when she went overboard, it pulled the safety, and the keys were never seen again. So that's why he had to paddle, all the way over from one side of this Sea of Abaco to the other side of the Sea of Abaco. She had the keys. I bet you he tossed the keys, because I'm looking for a place near where he washed up where he could have tossed the keys and then paddled from that point forward. And I bet you they were looking for Lynette when they should have been looking for the keys. I hope they found the keys. They were out there with their masks and stuff, but if they can find those dinghy keys, because guess what was also breaking news? The Bahamian Royal Police released the dinghy to the U.S. Coast Guard. So now it's in the U.S. Coast Guard custody. Can you imagine if they did find the key? Because we saw them pull out tanks. We don't know what all they pulled out. But from what we're hearing, when the Coast Guard went out there to look for Lynette, we're hearing that they found some other evidence out there. So I'm sure it has to be tested and confirmed that it goes with Bryan. None of it may go with Bryan. Maybe the only evidence that they secured that ties directly back to Lynette and Bryan might be the dinghy. But how crazy would it be if they did find the keys out there? The dinghy keys. Because that would make sense for him. But they made also a statement that I believe implies that they were at the Soulmate, that they did make it to Soulmate. They can put them on Soulmate. And it was when we were learning that they were asking the Bahamian police for access to this area to search. They said, we have data that shows he went to an area that had not been searched and back. Back where? To me, I think that was the our federal government's leakage, because it was never implied by law enforcement agents that they were on the Soulmate, because of Brian's story saying they never made it back to the Soulmate. And with that statement, I think that implies that law enforcement at least believes that they did make it back to the Soulmate. Because when they were talking about this right here, this search right here, they said that his devices dinged in an area that wasn't searched before he went back. And I was like, back where? Where did he go back to? And I think that that's them implying that they made it back to the Soulmate. And not only that, but we also have all of these things here. Where is it? I thought I had it up here. I didn't take a picture of it right. But what it says is, this is the Apple Watch. Her Apple Watch, what she was wearing earlier that day and observed on her wrist, was her pink banded Apple Watch. That was found on the Soulmate. The satellite went down and the splash happened all at 9:30 at night. There were lights on the boat at 7:47 that lit the area up pretty bright. So it seems like it was their floodlights on their boat that turned on. And then there was a horizontal flare gun that was shot off. So a flare is something that is on a boat. So whenever you have any type of issues, they're supposed to be waterproof too, water resistant, and you load them into this plastic GUN type firing thing, and you point it up in the air and it shoots up, and it's like an SOS. It notifies anybody that's out in the water that you are in need of help. And he said he shot up 2 of those, but it appears that somebody saw one going horizontally down the soulmate as if it was used as a weapon instead of a notification of stress. So I thought that that was weird. But what I find the most weird is that the satellite was physically turned off. So I think with the satellite turning off at 9:30 and the splash in the water at 9:30, I think that tells us a lot about, the pistol flare. There you go. Thank you. And that's what it is. It shoots up in the air. So this went horizontally, and I think it was either used as a weapon or used as a defense mechanism, because we just don't know. It seems it seems as if what had happened is it appears that the bright light bulb that kind of lit up the lights, it seemed like those were the floodlights on the boat, and that happened at 7:47. We're hearing from witnesses that this flare was seen going horizontally next to the soulmate at around 8. So that tells us almost within 20 or 30 minutes of them getting on that boat, a fight must have exploded on that boat. And by 9:30, the satellites are going down, and there's a splash in a loud, deep splash. Not something like a fish, something that was heavy being dropped into the water as it was being described. Splash. And that happened at 9:30. So I just find that really, really ultra bizarre that all of these things, and like I said, I truly do believe they are building a circumstantial case. And I don't think they're going to need Lynette, which is, it's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing, because if they don't need her, are they going to really put, how much energy are they going to put in bringing her home? We'd hope that, it being a Coast Guard, we never leave anybody behind, that's kind of how the American people are. We don't leave any man behind. I'm hoping even if they don't need her, they continue to search for her, because she needs to be brought home to her family. And right now she's not being brought home to her family. It also, there's also another part of this that we may want to consider. If there was a place that was in and around that area that was special to Lynette and Bryan, that they just thought was really cool, or really just one specific area. Usually if somebody knows what, I could almost put money on it that she would more likely be in that spot than any other spot in the Sea of Abaco, because I believe no matter how angry Bryan was, I think he meant to but didn't mean to hurt her this bad. And so he would want to, in my mind, I feel like he would want to feel like he did something special. Just how sick that sounds, but putting her in that special spot, giving her that, that's kind of where I feel like this is going. So I guess only time will tell whether she is found. But I do hope they continue to look for her daughter and her mother's sake. We did see an interview that her mom just did, and it broke my heart, especially when she says that if this is true, then Bryan basically took her daughter's life and threw her away like garbage. After 25 years, after being part of the family, he could just do that to her. So there's a lot of hurt feelings there. There's a lot of, things that are concerning, that they are, that are problematic. But this is the totality of the case, and the totality of the case is not looking good or boding well with Bryan's story. So check out my videos. I've just been starting to drop videos about this case. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Bullhorn Betty channel.